Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I hope you didn't mind my first car video because as you can see we are back inside of the car. But I am excited to be bringing you a review of the Alabasta arc today. Now before we get into the Alabasta arc, there are a few things that I want to talk about. First of all, in my last review, I asked about the time skip, and it honestly fills me with joy that the One Piece community as a whole all came together in my comment section and just said, you shouldn't even know about the time skip. Don't ask about the time skip. It's a spoiler. We're giving you no information. Just forget you even heard it. And that was the overwhelming response that I got, which I thought was really great, and I did really appreciate that. Secondly, and on a point of, not so ideal, but, not really bad news at all, unfortunately, because this is a longer review, I will have to put it into two videos. I'll release the first one today and the next one tomorrow. It's just an unfortunate reality that as a smaller creator, I can only upload certain file sizes. And as this is a bigger arc, this will be a bigger review, and so it will be a bigger file, and unfortunately I cannot just upload one massive file because I am a smaller creator. Not really a big deal though. I mean, the first half will be today, the second half will be tomorrow. I'm not going to make you wait another week to see the second half of this review. And also I am going to be filming this in two parts. So this part right now that you're seeing, I am up to chapter 170. And this is generally how I film reviews for bigger books. I will do a check-in point at about 300, 600, 900, every about 300 pages or so. And it just stops me from forgetting points that I want to talk about. And there has been a lot happening so far, and I've saved a whole lot of panels that I want to put up and talk about. But with all that out of the way, let's jump straight into this review. So firstly, I'm going to pop this panel up right here. Now, I thought that this arc was really interesting in the way that this was the first arc to have its own prologue. As far as I remember, every other arc started off with the pirates. There was like a screenshot or like a snapshot of their daily life, their daily needs, their daily struggles, working together, their fights, them getting along, them not getting along, all that kind of stuff. And then it would break away into something that they either needed or needed to do, which is how you write a good story. In case anyone needs to know, you start with a snapshot of your main character's life because this character exists before your story and more than likely after the story. So you have to start at a snapshot of their life. But this was the first story to begin with its own prologue. Specifically, Mr. Crocodile coming and fighting the pirates to save the people for what we can imagine is a couple of reasons. Firstly, we know that Mr. Crocodile needs to win the hearts and minds of the people. So when he completes his coup, the people will follow him without hesitation. And secondly, it's safe to assume that he wants the bounty on the pirates' heads. Which brings me to this panel right here. Now, I actually started reading this arc twice. I read through to about chapter 10 and then I stopped. And then I came back and I reread it from the start again. And on my first reread, I thought that he was taking away loot. I thought he was taking away treasure when he was in this arc right here. Because I thought it would be something like the Doctoress, how after she heals someone, she took away a bag of loot as well. But it's on my second reread, I realized that he's actually taking away the pirates' heads. Just like he said he was going to do at the beginning, right? He said, I'm not here to save you. I've come here to take these pirates' heads. And although there's no blood on the bag, you could just from the shading of his face, you can kind of see that he's up to no good. You can kind of see that he's got something dark in that sack, which you can presume is those pirates' heads. It's in this prologue that we also get an introduction to the crocodile's powers. We get to see that he has some kind of control of the sand. And we also see that, after he'd got stabbed a few times with the swords, he was perfectly fine. So we know that, Zoro probably isn't going to have a lot to do with the fight against Mr. Crocodile because the blades probably won't hurt him. But more than that, it also shows the setup for the political struggle, which is something that is very hard to make interesting, right? Political struggles, even in the real world, there's a lot of really, interesting political struggles out there that people just wouldn't care about at all. So to write them into your story and to throw people right into the mix of your political struggle is a very brave thing to do. But Oda does handle this incredibly well. And we see the king saying, look, we are indebted to this man. Wow, these people are fantastic. they have been saving these villages for ages, and the army officers have explained, we weren't able to get there in time before, Mr. Crocodile had already gone in there, swept out all the pirates and saved the day. And so it really reinforces that not only does the town folks already believe in Mr. Crocodile and believe that they are the savior and the hero, the king also knows that they are indebted to his service. And so obviously the king doesn't expect him to be the head of Baroque Works, the head of this secret organization that's, undermining everything he's doing and waiting to take over the kingdom. Next, I want to talk about this panel right here. Now, this panel might not really seem like it's got, a lot to do with the story or anything like that, and it really doesn't, but I just wanted to highlight that I'm really glad that Chopper is fitting in with the crew, right? Like, Luffy got busted by Sanji for eating their food. And it would have been really easy for Oda to put, Zoro and Usopp here eating, even with the duck, whatever. But I really enjoy the fact that they put Chopper there to show, Chopper fitting in, Chopper assimilating himself with the crew. He joined in, the food theft, or he joined in being irresponsible and eating their supplies. It's just something little and dumb, but I actually really liked it. Okay, so moving on, we get another classic Luffy moment, and I'll pop it up here. So basically, after they've had their whole big conversation about Baroque Works and the rebellion and the king, and how Mr. Crocodile has won the hearts and minds of the people, so there's going to be all this drama going on, we get this classic Luffy moment where he says, oh, okay, so all I have to do is kick their asses, right? And then everything will be solved. And the princess is just yeah, sure. Kick their asses, plus, stop the rebellion and chase the entire Baroque Works out of Alabasta as well. And then we'll have peace. But yeah, just kick their asses as well. Moving on from there, we also get the setup for all of Mr. Two's abilities. They rescue him from the steam escaping from the ocean, and he says, I'll put on a show for you guys while I'm waiting for my crew to come and rescue me. And he steals everyone's faces or copies everyone's faces, however you want to look at it. And you really know that this moment has a lot of significance and a lot of weight. Not only because he does, steal their faces, which obviously has to come back later on into the story, but also when he's leaving the crew and he ends up back on his own boat and they're sailing away, he's, beaming and he's really happy, and his officers or his people that are with him says, Mr. Two, why are you so happy right now? And he says, I have planted the seeds of friendship. And I can't help but feel that has to come back up. I can't help but feel that what an odd thing to include into the story without having it have a deeper meaning. Of course, I could just be reading too far into that, but my, official prediction, I'm only, 15 chapters in when I'm filming this first part, but my official prediction is maybe Mr. Two will hesitate, or, he will, something to do with the friendship that he made on that boat will make him betray Baroque Works, or save them in some way, shape, or form, or even just hesitate to take an action against them. I don't know, I feel like there's something there, especially because later on, when they are at the Spider Cafe, I think it was called, when Mr. Two meets up with Mr. One, they get into that big fight. So there's clearly some distrust, there's clearly some resentment between the Baroque Works people. So that could very well lead to some kind of something happening here. This also brings me on to the standard I've got to talk about Usopp moment. Let's talk about this panel right here. So after all they've talked about, all this rebellion and the big battle and, blah, 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 all this stuff, all this craziness that they expect to come and how powerful their enemy is, Chopper says, what do I do? And Usopp says, just do what you can do. You can't do any more than you can do. If you come across a bigger enemy, a stronger enemy, just run away. It's all good as long as you give it your all in everything that you do. Which, is just by itself great advice, but it's also something that Usopp has been dealing with this whole time. And we also get this second panel here where Usopp is look, I'm sorry that I passed out. I'm not freakishly strong monsters like you guys. And it just kind of shows that kind of like Usopp is the humanizing character of the crew. Usopp is the one that keeps us as the reader grounded where we would sit in amongst the crew. You know, we would be the ones going, look, we'll just do the best we can, but we're probably just going to have to run away when a gum or a devil fruit user rocks up and starts beating the crap out of us. Anyway, that was my nice little brief. Usopp isn't a coward. He's secretly the hero of the story, you know, thing over with. Let's talk about Ace. Now, Ace, I knew from the beginning that he was Luffy's brother, right? Like, he's drawn a lot like Luffy, like his facial features and his structure. He does look so much like Luffy. So as soon as I saw his face, I was like, okay, yep, that's definitely Luffy's brother. But more than that, he also acts like Luffy does. Like, for example, how the first scene we see him in, he's like fallen asleep in his food midway through eating and talking, which I believe is something that we saw Luffy do in an earlier arc. But what I also want to bring up is it's very interesting, his tattoo. Now, it's S that's been crossed out CE. Now, is this something deeper, or is this something that is simply just like a joke? Like the person that was tattooing Ace didn't know how to spell Ace, so he wrote AS and then was like, oh crap, that's not how you spell Ace, and crossed it out. If that is a spoiler, don't tell me, but if it isn't a spoiler, you know, feel free to let me know if it was like just a joke, like the tattoo artist didn't know how to spell Ace, or if it is something more prevalent or important later on. But something that I will point out that I noticed was that Gold Roger's name is not Gold Roger, right? This is something that you guys have told me. His name is Gol D. Roger. And Luffy's name is Monkey D. Luffy. And Ace's name is like Portgas D. Ace. So because Luffy and Ace are brothers, right? I don't know how like naming conventions work in Japan, but I'm going to presume that D has got some kind of like family name connotation to it. So maybe like 1 or 2 arcs ago, I said that I either think that Luffy is Gold Roger's son or Gold Roger reincarnated. But now that we know that, you know, Luffy, Monkey D. Luffy and Portgas D. Ace both have that middle initial, which I'm presuming is some kind of family name that gets passed on, and Gold D. Roger has that same thing, I am putting more stock into my theory that Luffy and Ace now are both descendants of Gold Roger. Now, obviously, I could be very wrong, and it turns out that, you know, Monkey and Portgas are their family names, and Luffy and Ace just had different dads. Like, that's obviously something that could be very true. Like I said, I don't know the naming conventions in Japan, so I don't know how that family name thing kind of works. But as they all have like D as their middle initial, I'm going to presume that they are Gold Roger's descendants. Next, let's talk about this moment right here. I really enjoyed this kind of like breakdown of the ranking system of Baroque Works. I thought that it was only to the benefit of the story to include a visual representation of their rank structure, because it was kind of hard to get a grip of like Mr. 1, 2, 3, 4, 12 to 13 or however many there are, and Miss whatever their code name was. So it was really great to save this panel just as like a future reference guide to see the structure and to see who's who in the zoo and, you know, where people are allocated. But it also clarified to me the like billions and millions and why they were the way that they were, because I thought the billions were the lower ones and the millions were the higher ones, because it was like how many people were in that specific category. So it makes sense for the millions to be higher because there would be less people in that category than the billions. But as it turns out, I'm pretty sure that the billions are higher because it represents the level of bounty that those people are sent out to collect. Now, I don't know that for sure. I'm just pretty positively presuming that that's correct. All right, so after we get, you know, Luffy and all the crew land on the thing, and Luffy obviously runs off like an idiot and just, you know, runs straight to a restaurant to eat. And we get that scene, which is fantastic, where Luffy crashes through the restaurant, knocks Ace and Smoker through the walls We actually get a scene that I really like. I really like this scene where Ace kind of like bows to the people in the thing and says, you know, I'm sorry for interrupting your meal, or whatever he says. I'm sure you can read it right here. I really like that part. I really like how just like respectful and nice we get Ace to be represented, you know, at least at the beginning. We get him being respectful and nice, and I do appreciate that. And that whole like restaurant scene was great, but the specific point I want to talk about happens when Smoker is chasing Luffy out of the restaurant and through the street. And Luffy's got all that food stuffed in his mouth. And Luffy's running, and he has a thought to himself. He thinks something along the lines of, my attacks have no effect on this guy. All I can do is run. And people have told me that Luffy does not get a lot of character growth in this series. And that's something that I find incredibly hard to believe, because as we can already see, if you've seen my other reviews, Luffy has already grown so much. And I think that this is a culmination of that. I feel as if Luffy not turning around to fight Smoker, even though he knows his attacks have no effect on him, is a throwback to the last arc, when firstly the princess humbled him on the boat and was like, you know, after she was shot, she was like, don't fight, we can't fight these people, we need their help. And she made Luffy kind of look like a bad captain because he was always just trying to fight instead of doing what was best for the crew. Right, so there was that moment where he had to not fight and use his head instead. Plus, later on, when Sanji and Luffy and Nami are heading up the hill and he couldn't fight the rabbits because it would hurt Nami in the process. And that was the first two real times that we saw Luffy really getting like consequences for fighting and really actively choosing not to fight for the greater good. And I feel as if this moment was like a recontextualization of those earlier moments, because I feel as if Luffy at the beginning of like One Piece would have still fought Smoker, even though he knew that his attacks had no effect on him. And basically that is a really long way for me to say that I do not believe that Luffy will not get good character growth in this series, because we've already seen that he has had good character growth. Maybe that stagnates, I don't know, but I'm saying that I find it hard to believe. Another one of the things that I really liked about this arc was that we got a view into the Cutthroat world of the Baroque Works. Specifically here, you can see when the Billions are there, and I think it's Mr. 12 that they're rescuing from the ships, and he's like tied up there, and he says like, you know, please help me, come untie me, thank you very much. And the Billions are just like, why would we help you? You are a low-ranking, you know, high-ranking officer. If we kill you, then there will be a space for one of us to be promoted. And I think that does a lot in the way of showing how, like, cutthroat the Baroque Works is, because, you know, I think that's good, because we do see so much, like, ridiculousness from the Baroque Works, including, like, Mr. 2, for example. Or Miss Christmas, which is like an old lady that's always complaining about her hips. You know, up to this point in the review, I haven't seen Miss Christmas do anything, but, you know, our interactions with her so far have been, like, ridiculous. So I think, like, showing the cutthroat nature of the Baroque Works did a really great thing and, like, went a long way to show that these people are serious and not just, like, the ridiculousness that we do see. Okay, so just talking about another couple of panels which I believe will have payoff later. I want to pop up this one about Chopper's nose and the perfume. Now, whether or not it will have a big effect on this story or something later on in the future, I have a feeling that this is being set up as, like, you know, Chopper has a really sensitive nose, Chopper can act like a bloodhound, Chopper can track scents, Chopper can recognize scents, Chopper can smell danger, Chopper can smell an ambush, I don't know. But I just have a feeling that they're really trying to show up Chopper's sensitive nose right now. Because as I've talked about, like, before in the other reviews with the log pose, the eternal pose, talking about, you know, the climate and the different weather systems and the different, like, island types and all that, how Oda was setting up all of these things from the start, so as he explores whatever he wants to explore later on, it never feels convenient or rushed or anything like that. It always will feel in place and well thought out. I have a feeling that is also what's happening with Chopper's nose right now. We are getting set up as the reader to know, hey, look, Chopper is an animal, Chopper has a sensitive nose, if we need him to track something in the future or to recognize a scent, it will make sense because, we've set it up right here in this perfume market to make sense. The next panel is this one, where they're walking through the desert and Luffy is like, hey, I want to eat. Can we sit down and eat somewhere? And the princess is like, look, you know what? I'll tell you what. The next rock we see, we will sit down and eat. And obviously she knows there won't be a rock for ages. This one makes me realize that, in my perspective, I see the princess as the mum of the group. A lot of people have said that they see Nami as the mum of the group. But, as I've said before, I see Nami as the pimp of the group. So, I definitely see the princess as the mother of the group because she is trying to hold them to a better standard. Like, I feel as if Luffy has learnt a lot from the princess. And I feel as if the way that she has handled the, ridiculousness of the crew has been in a very, motherly kind of way. Like, where she will just, shake her head, but, be happy about these kids having a good time or whatever it is they're doing. I don't know, to me, she strikes me more as the mother of the group. But this also brings me on to some predictions that I want to make. Firstly, whether or not the princess will join the pirate crew, because obviously she's been around for a couple of arcs, so it begs the question, will the princess join the pirate crew? Now, there are a couple of ways that I see this going. Either one, the dad will die, and she will have no choice but to, stay behind and lead her country. Two, the dad will survive, and she will say to the dad, look, these people are really good people. They need me. I want to see more of the world before I am put in a position to lead people because I need to understand the needs of regular people more. And so then she will join the crew. And I feel as if that has a lot more validity to it because, as we see in the flashback when she's fighting with that little boy, who we find out becomes the leader of the rebels, which is pretty great. We get the idea that the dad likes the fact that the little girl or the princess is hanging out with commoners because he believes it will make her a better leader because she will be more in touch with the commoners because the commoners will like her more because they grew up with her. So it does make sense that they carry that theme on further and be like, hey, look, Dad, you keep the kingdom for a little while. I'm going to go and travel around with my friends and try and see more of the world, right? We've already got her sad backstory. We've already got her position in the crew. My estimation is she's the mum. We've already got the duck has a sad backstory and the duck has a position in the crew. So it would make sense for her and the duck to join. But honestly, I'm really 50-50. I couldn't tell you one way or the other whether or not I expect her to join the crew or stay and lead the kingdom. To me, it really comes down to whether or not the dad dies. If the dad dies, she will stay. If he doesn't, she will go. And I'm pretty excited to find out which one because, honestly, if she does go with the crew, I'm fine with that. We've already got a lot of her character. I like her. I think she's great. I like the duck. I think the duck's great. And there's a lot of really funny moments that happen with the duck, when they ran out of bait, so they decided to use the duck as bait and, the princess comes and beats them. But in saying that, if the princess and the duck stay behind, it creates more room on the crew for new people to join, new stories. So in saying that, because this is the last arc of this saga, I am going to officially predict that she will stay behind to make room for new crew and new stories. One of the things that I did find really odd about this particular arc was the whole Baroque Works meeting. And I'll start from the beginning. When they all first arrived, I liked that. I liked meeting all of the people and seeing them talk and have their petty squabbles and whatever. I thought that the Land of Dreams or the City of Dreams or whatever it is that they called that, Las Vegas place, I thought that was actually going to be in their dreams. When they were in that turtle carriage, I was expecting them all to, fall asleep. It was more about the ride putting everyone to sleep, and then the shopkeeper would take them all to the world of dreams where they would meet Mr. Crocodile. And to me, that made sense because, if they had the ability to talk to these people in their dreams, they wouldn't need to meet them in the beginning. But that's neither here nor there. That's not a whatever or whatever. The thing that I wanted to talk about specifically was when they found out that Mr. Crocodile was one of the 7 warlords, so he was technically a pirate, even though he's technically not a pirate anymore. The people seemed really shocked, right? All the, like, Baroque Works agents seemed really shocked to be working for a pirate, and they were just like, what? This whole time we've been taking orders from a pirate? And that just seemed really bizarre to me, because it's like, you're a criminal organization. Like, you're technically pirates too. I mean, what makes someone a pirate? Like, is it that you're going against the law on the ocean? Because that's exactly what you guys were doing. Like, you were going against the law on the ocean as well. So wouldn't that make you guys pirates too? But also, isn't it a bit odd that you're so shocked that you're working for a pirate when you are a criminal organization in itself? And obviously I get that they are hunting down other pirates to collect their bounties, but I mean, is that not something that pirates would do anyway? I don't know, that just caught me by surprise. I was like, why are they so shocked that they're working for a pirate? That doesn't seem like something that should be so shocking to them. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is the fact that Ace is sailing the opposite direction of the Grand Line. I thought that this was another really good piece of early world building in order for Oda to be able to tell whatever story that he wants. Specifically, up until this point, I, as the reader, thought that you could only travel in the one direction along the Grand Line. I thought it was you enter, you go this way, you do the loop, and you can come out the other side. I didn't realize, like, I thought maybe there was like currents and like the whole climate and everything made the water only travel in the one direction, or made it impossible to travel the other direction. Maybe it like constantly pushed you out to the calm belt. I don't know. But I didn't realize that you could travel the other way along the Grand Line, which now that I think about it is kind of like a silly thing to think, but it's what I thought. So it was good for the author to use Ace to clarify that point that, you know, you can sail the other way in the Grand Line, which, as I said, happens nice and early in the story, so they can use that at any point they want in the future without it feeling convenient or out of place. Next, I want to talk about the Kung Fu Jugongs. Now, if I have the panel here, I'll put it up. I don't know if I saved this one, but hopefully I did. The Kung Fu Jugongs is a great, just awesome example of the like goofy silliness of One Piece that I honestly believe isn't just goofy silliness. I have a feeling that these Kung Fu Jugongs will make a reappearance in this story. I have a feeling because they have like some kind of loyalty to Luffy now, and then like Chopper feeds them a bunch of meat. I have a feeling that these Jugongs might have some kind of loyalty to the Straw Hat crew now, and at some dire point in the story, these Kung Fu Jugongs are going to like jump out of the water and provide a distraction or like save Luffy or like whatever. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I would really appreciate it if it did. Okay, so next let's talk about one of the bigger shifts that I've noticed in the One Piece writing. And that is that I've noticed that these stories are becoming a lot more convoluted or in-depth or bigger. Let's look at it at that. The stories in One Piece are starting to have a lot of more of a bigger scope. They're starting to include a lot more, characters. The characters are doing a lot bigger things. In this one specifically, we've got 3 different factions vying for 3 different goals, and they even put in like a little physical diagram. I'll put it up here, and it shows that like the kingdom knows that Baroque Works is behind like all this craziness that's going on. So they're sending their army to Baroque Works to go and, kill Crocodile. The rebellion that's under the impression that the king used the dance powder to steal all the water and like, as a result, killed all the other places, is sending their rebellion army to go and overthrow the kingdom. And Baroque Works is just kind of like doing their thing, right? Now, let's talk about the whole scope of that situation, how like in-depth that was for them to put in the like double cross, undercut, undermine thing that they did, right? And we really get that information in the form of a flashback, which if you've ever tried to write a story, flashbacks are incredibly hard to do and people generally hate them. But One Piece does them incredibly well, and I've never met anyone that didn't like them. But we get the information that the king was set up by bringing in the dance powder. So from what we can imply from this like flashback and all the information we get is that Crocodile was using the dance powder without the king's knowledge. And the king was just like, oh, wow, awesome. We're getting heaps of rain here. That's really great. And then after a while, we get, that scene where there's the big delivery of the dance powder and it gets like exploded out the front of the kingdom. And everybody naturally blames the king, right? And we can presume that that was Crocodile that set that whole thing to like fall apart in front of the kingdom to frame the king. And then the whole rebellion springs up from there. And as the rebellion's doing its thing, Crocodile is also saving the day from pirates to win the hearts and minds of people. So it's really interesting how big that scope becomes in that, they set up the king, they set up the rebellion, they kind of like fuel the rebellion's hatred by ensuring that all the other places have gone to drought and started dying. And they kind of like let the rebellion do their own thing because, as far as I'm aware, Mr. Crocodile doesn't run the rebellion. He just kind of like fueled that fire. And while he's fueling that fire, he's winning the hearts and minds of people over here instead of engaging in any kind of like rebellious activity that might damage his credibility to become the next ruler. I like how complex that story became. How there's this like triangle and they're all fighting with or against each other in their own ways. And then our heroes come in and they're not, fighting against the rebels or they're not going to the castle or whatever. They are going straight to the real issue, the root of the problem, to Mr. Crocodile to go and mess him up. Now let's talk about the princess's backstory, right? The princess's backstory I really enjoyed. I really thought it was great. But it is one of those things that does make me think that she will join the crew because she's been given like a sad backstory. I really liked that she went down and like challenged that boy to a fight and they like punched on. And then afterwards the boy was like, all right, she's going to be our like vice captain. She's going to be our vice commander. I'm still your commander, but she'll be like second in command. And then that whole like friendship and, the parents are just like, oh, wow, what a safe, peaceful country we live in for the princess to just be able to like run in and out and play with these other kids on the street. But I will say that I thought the leader would die when, that guy's trying to kidnap the princess and he like pulls his knife and it's just that guy and the princess. And, the leader runs in to like hit him with his stick or whatever he's got. I honestly thought that that little kid was going to die there. And then that would have like a massive impact on the princess's sad backstory and why she's trying so hard to ensure that no one dies in this upcoming battle. Little did I know that he would turn out to actually be fine and then be the leader of the rebels. And just while I'm talking about the leader of the rebels, let's talk about this panel right here. Now, one of the things that a lot of authors really struggle to do is show the horrors of war or the aftermath of war or, how like gritty and disgusting and just like bad it is, right? A lot of authors really struggle to do that because they either focus too much on like the gritty, dark, blood, death, people shitting themselves when they die, like that kind of real, just like visceral stuff, or they don't focus on it at all and they really do a lot of glorifying war. And it really is like a hard line to draw. It really is such a like fine rope to get it right and to do it well. But I liked the way that Oda did it here. There's no like blood, guts, gore. It's just a man standing there showing you what he's lost in this fight. It's just a man standing there showing you the realities of a life of warfare. And so I did like that panel quite a bit. Now, I haven't seen like anything happen between like the rebel leader and the princess, but I'm really excited to see when they like first come head to head because I'm sure that they're going to like clash at some point or they're going to have a reunion or like something's going to happen. There's no way that they're like friends and they have that backstory and they're like not going to meet up with each other. So I'm really excited to see what happens when they like clash, whether or not they're just going to be like, hey, look, my dad, the king, was set up. Come and fight for us instead. Let's be friends. Bury the hatchet. I'll make you a queen's advisor once I become the queen. So that'll be really interesting to see. I'm really looking forward to find out what happens there. Next, I want to talk about this panel right here. Now, before this panel, we see... everyone gets to that oasis town. It's just been hit by a sandstorm and the oasis was buried in sand. and everyone kind of like goes to sleep. But the old man Toto is there, and he's digging up the oasis. He's digging up the sand because that's just what he's done for 3 years. He just has to dig deep enough, and then the water will come. And he says something to Luffy, along those lines of like, I was entrusted to run this by the king, and that's exactly what I'll do. I've fought against this sand for 3 years, and I'm not going to stop fighting against it now. And Luffy, being a chaotic agent of the universe and a chaotic agent of good, picks up his shovel, or he starts using his hand, and he just starts like helping the old man dig. And he digs and he digs and he digs until he like passes out and falls asleep inside of the hole. Because to Luffy, that's just the right thing to do. And so that's exactly what he does, which is honestly one of those great things everybody loves about Luffy. He's just this thing of chaos and good. But that brings me to this panel here. Now, obviously the old man was like really appreciative of Luffy's hard work. And so in this panel, when they're leaving, he gives Luffy a little container of water, and he says, we distilled this water from the hole that you dug. You dug the hole and hit wet dirt, which allowed me to distill this water, and I'm giving you most of it, or I'm giving you some of it, or whatever he says. I don't think that they found any water, and the old man just gave Luffy all of his water supply. And I feel like that's shown by like this panel right here, where like the shovel is just in the dirt. I haven't gotten any confirmation from it so far, but like, I'm just saying, like, I don't think I'm reading too far into that. I think the old man just gave Luffy all of his water because he obviously appreciates everything that Luffy did for him. Now, I want to talk about Mr. 2 again. One of the things that I really enjoy about One Piece, and I looked this up before, One Piece was written or starting to be written in 1997, if I remember correctly. Now, one of the things that I really enjoy about stories like, say, One Piece or, Friends even, is I really enjoy stories that were written in that time period, and you can really see how the perspective of the world and how the perspective of storytelling shifts over the past 20 to 30 years. Like, for example, in the case of Friends in recent history has been criticized for the fact that it didn't really have any black characters. Like, it had the one where, like, I think Ross had a black girlfriend, but that was really it. And back in that time, that was fine, but now in today's society, that's not. And Friends has also been criticized for, like, the male nanny episode and a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, the thing we should all really be criticizing Friends for is, like, Ross and Rachel, man. That whole thing was just toxic as fuck. Like, I cannot believe for one period in time everyone wanted those two together. They shouldn't even have friends or partners. They shouldn't even be allowed to date. That whole thing was just so toxic, and anyone that tries to emulate their relationship after Ross and Rachel is just on drugs. But that's completely off the point. Anyway, as I was saying, Mr. 2. Let's talk about Mr. 2. I really like that One Piece gives us a glimpse into the past, into things that are no longer okay today. Like, I've noticed that, people will say certain words that you would not be allowed to say in storytelling today. And I'm not going to, like, obviously say those words because the YouTube gods would be very angry at me, but there are, like, certain words and certain phrases and certain things that happen in One Piece that would definitely get the storyteller in a lot of trouble these days. And one of those things is Mr. 2, in how it represents, like, a trans person, or, like, I don't really know what the deal is with Mr. 2, if he's like a drag kind of like cross-dresser or whatever his deal is. Whatever he is, he would not be allowed to exist in modern storytelling because he would be considered problematic. But sitting here and reading it and, like, glimpsing into the past, it is really interesting to see how that character would be represented. And honestly, I like Mr. 2 as a character. I think that he is very interesting. I think that one of the things that was very interesting about him is when we got to see that chart of the Baroque Works hierarchy, he didn't have a female with him. Like, all the males have, like, Mr. Number, and they have a sidekick, or they have, like, a equivalent agent that's a woman, and it's Miss a certain day. But because he is a trans person or a crossdresser or drag or whatever he is, he doesn't get a female partner because he's considered both a man and a woman. Which is honestly pretty interesting storytelling. It makes sense, it's clever, whatever. I won't keep talking about this because I'm sure I will say something that will get me in trouble. Now, let's talk about the reappearance of Mr. 3 in that meeting with Mr. Crocodile. Now, this is important for a couple of reasons. First of all, we get another look into Mr. Crocodile's powers. We get to see him dry out Mr. 3 while he's like chugging him or grabbed him or whatever he's done. And we get to see him drying out Mr. 3. Which is another show of his powers, like we've been getting these little shows of Mr. Crocodile's powers before he started fighting the Straw Hats. Which is, like I've said 100 times, great storytelling on Oda's half. But one of the other things we see is we get to see something from Little Garden come back up in this episode. We get the flashback to when Sanji is calling him on the snail and says like, yep, everything's taken care of, everything's all great. And we get to see the aftermath of that, how Mr. Crocodile didn't know that Mr. 3 failed and thought he'd at least killed, a couple of them. Which is just a nice little thing. It really does show that there are like consequences to the actions that the characters make. There are like good consequences and bad consequences to the actions that they're making. In this one, it was specifically a good consequence because they thought that these people were dead, so they didn't send anyone onto the high seas to kill them. Boom! Magic! And we're in a new location. Yeah, sorry, my camera battery died, so I had to come back home and charge my battery to finish off this review. Anyway, continuing on. Something that I noticed in this arc that I wanted to bring up because it was something that I kind of noticed in the last one, but I didn't really mention, but I've noticed 2 instances in this one so far, is I want to bring up Zoro's attitude towards Sanji. I feel as if there is some kind of hostility there. I don't really understand it. I haven't really put my finger on it, but I've noticed it's whenever Sanji is like kind of simping for Nami or the princess, Zoro has just kind of said something under his breath. Like he'll call Sanji an idiot, or, he will say something, and it doesn't seem like the friendly kind of banter that usually happens. It seems like Zoro is actually kind of mad about it. And I'm not really sure what's going on there, if that is going to build up into something more, if that's going to build up into like a character fight between them, or if they're going to like talk this out or punch on or, whatever. But I have a feeling that there is some kind of something building up in regards to Zoro and his attitude towards Sanji whenever he's simping for the girls. And if anyone else has noticed that, I would really like to hear your thoughts, theories. Am I reading too far into it? Am I on the money? What's going on here? Because there's definitely something, and I wish I saved the panels, but I didn't save the panels. But any more that I see, I will save the panels to show you guys what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's just something that I wanted to bring up because I have started to notice. I did notice it in the last one, but I have definitely noticed it's been more numerous in this one so far. And I have a feeling that's done on purpose. I have a feeling that's not just like a random thing that I'm noticing. So from here, everything is really just like building up to its apex. Everything is like, this whole beginning 15 chapters has felt like a massive prologue to this arc, which is specifically why I stopped where I stopped to film this part of the review, because all of this has just been building up. And now everyone has like made their way into the casino. They've got like Smoker and all of the Straw Hat crew, everyone except for the princess who was with the Falcon person, the Falcon with the machine gun. So everything has just been like building up so far. It's been really great. And this is where I thought I would, film my first initial thoughts, just to like talk about all of that prologue stuff, all of the build up that's been happening, just so I don't forget any of it, because I'm sure over the next like 50 chapters, there's going to be a whole lot of stuff happening, especially like, if the king dies, or, once the princess and the rebel leader meet up, I'm sure there's going to be some like drama there. Maybe Ace comes back. I don't know. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening. There's 50 more chapters, and I'm really excited to see what happens next. For me, I'll be reading, the next 50 chapters over the next couple of days and then recording my review of it. But for you guys, it will just be the day after I release this video. So I usually release these on a Thursday, so it'll probably be a Friday that you get to see part 2. But before we go, I just want to talk on one more piece of really interesting world building that I like that Oda included in this one. And that is the inclusion of the Sea Stone, I believe it was called. The thing on the end of Smoker's weapon that stops Luffy from being able to use his Gum Gum abilities. It's got the same, like, frequency or gives off the same energy that the sea does. Which I think is a really interesting piece of world building for the author to include because, one, it answers the question, how do the Marines even keep devil fruit users in order to, like, hang them or execute them or try them or, you know, whatever? Because obviously people would have had that question, how would they keep them? Now the answer is out there. But two, it also gives us a definitive weakness for Luffy. It gives us a literal kryptonite for Luffy because it is, you know, a rock that saps him of his powers, just like kryptonite does. And obviously, just like kryptonite, it gives us a whole lot of questions that we'll ask, like, what if a bullet is made out of sea stone? If Luffy gets shot with a sea stone bullet, will it bounce off his rubber skin or will it punch straight through him because it just doesn't give a care about the Gum Gum powers? Plus, I'm sure, you know, more intelligent people will come up with more intelligent questions than that. But I really like that they have set up this early piece of world building. Like I've said 100 times, they set it up from the beginning so it will not feel convenient or out of place later on if they decide to include it in the story that they tell. So yeah, that was basically part one of this Alabasta review. I'm really enjoying it. I'm really interested to see what happens next. I'm really interested to see if the king lives, if the princess joins the crew, if the princess and the rebel leader make up, or if they fight, or, you know, I have a feeling that the rebel leader might have some bad blood in regards to the princess. Something along the lines of, how could you let this happen to the kingdom? I'm really interested to see how that happens, if they work things out. If the rebel leader dies, what happens with Mr. Crocodile and Baroque Works? Does Luffy kill Mr. Crocodile, or does he Gum Gum Bazooka him away, which in turn keeps Mr. Crocodile alive? And just on that, a prediction, I'm sure Luffy will fight the crocodiles and, like, Gum Gum twisty corkscrew smash them into the ground. That's just a prediction I have. But yeah, I guess we'll find out tomorrow in part 2 of this review. I'll see you then. Please like this video, leave me a comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, thank you very much.